everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Talking Cardboard. My name is Cory, and this is a continuation of my top 50 favorite board games of all time. On today's list, I talk about my games number 20 down to number 16, and I hope you all enjoy. Let's get right into it.
Number 20.
All right, and boy, oh boy, is my game number 20 on the list a heavy one. A very, very heavy Euro-style game. It was number 7 on my list last year, so it has dropped 13 spots down to number 20. Still very, very high on my list, and there are two different iterations of this game, actually, and I could... I could go with either version. Either version is just fine. But on this year's list, I am choosing Terra Mystica as my number 20 game over Gaia Project. The other game in the line is Gaia Project. Terra Mystica is more of the fantasy setting. Gaia Project is pretty much the same game, but set in a space theme. But I think I really do like the fantasy setting better. And I'll tell you why now. So in Terra Mystica, you've got this player board with a bunch of different buildings on it. Money is very, very, very tight in this game, as you are trying to build out your buildings and upgrade them to basically give you these different resources at the beginning of each round. The better you can upgrade your buildings, the better you can expand your expand your network of buildings, the more resources and money you get during each round to then basically expand and upgrade and build more. And the resources are very tight. Like I said, money is very tight. One of the really cool things in this game that I really enjoy in Terra Mystica over its other counterpart, Gaia Project, is that in Terra Mystica, you have these different land types on the map. You've got rivers and forests and swamps and mountains and all these different types, but your race that you start with at the beginning of the game is different and unique to any other race that any of your opponents have at the start of the game, and that race is very specific to what land type they can build their buildings on. They can't build on any other land type on the entire map. So in order to convert your land type to the type that you can build on, you have to basically terraform the land. And how you do that in Terra Mystica, it's different than in Gaia Project. So I'm actually just going to stop talking about Gaia Project altogether on this list. You guys can check out other videos on Gaia Project some other time. But basically in this game, you've got this circular conversion map that's on your board, or this conversion wheel. And depending on how far away a specific land type is from the type that you need to terraform to, it could cost you a number of shovels. And depending on how many shovels you are away from that conversion to get to your land type, the more difficult it is to convert that to what you're looking for. So that puzzle is really cool. The tightness of those conversions are really fun to manipulate. There's another really cool thing on the player boards in this game too. It's called a power track. And you've basically got these like 3 different buckets of power. And as you are shifting power around those 3 buckets, you are trying to get all of them into bucket number 3 or zone number 3 on your player board, because once you get the power to zone number 3, you got these special abilities that you can do that your opponents can't do until they get their power track to zone number 3. And basically in this game, it is a 5-round game, and at the start of the game, you have perfect knowledge to what the 5 different goals are for each round of the game that you can build toward. So you've got these goals that you're building toward throughout the entire game that will trigger at the end of round 1. Another one will trigger at the end of round 2 and round 3 and so on and so forth. And if you have satisfied that goal, or the amount of times you've satisfied that goal, you get victory points for how well you have done. It's very fantasy-like, but very tactical, very strategic, very tight, and just another one that I love. If you really like those brain burners and those very tight resource style games, you will really like Terra Mystica.
Number 19.
All right, and my number 19 game was number 25 last year, so it's actually gone up 6 places. So number 19, that game is Queen Domino. Queen Domino is basically a classic game, or what I consider to be a classic in my collection already, because it is just so easy to bring out, so easy to teach, so easy to play. You can teach younger kids, you can play with adults, you can play with family that aren't as into games, you can play with any ages, any type of gamer, and they will pretty much love it. It's got that standard trope of playing dominoes. In the classic dominoes, you're trying to match up the different sides that are the same as one another. Same goes true in this game too. You've got these dominoes that have different land types on them. You've got one half as one land type, the half of the domino is the other half of the type, and you just basically are matching them together in front of you. The way you're getting these tiles are very cool too. It's got this very neat drafting system where you, at the beginning of each round, you actually place the tiles out based on their number from lowest to highest, and the higher the value number is, the better the tile is. The lower the value, the worse the tile is. And you place them in numerical order, flip them face up, so everybody has perfect knowledge to what tile is better than the rest. The thing that is really cool though is if you decide to draft one of the better tiles, you actually then get last pick, or closer to last pick for the next round for the next tile. So you're really trying to balance on what tiles you're taking when, because if you take that best tile, you get the last option at the new set of tiles as they come up in the next round. If you take maybe in that set of tiles you take the worst tile, then you get first option at the next tiles that come up. So if in the next batch there's even better tiles, you'd get first pick. So you're really trying to balance on when you're doing that to help benefit you the most. Also, as you're matching these tiles together, or as these dominoes tiles together, you are basically making these territories. Some of the territories have this crown symbol in it, and based on once you complete a territory, or once you have finished adding on to a territory, you take up the number of squares that territory equals, and you multiply it by however many of those territory squares have crowns on them. So for example, let's say I've got a water area that's 6 spaces big, and on 3 of those 6 spaces there's a crown. So if you've got 3 crowns, you multiply that by the 6 spaces, and that area will give you 18 points at the end of the game. You're basically doing that with all these different land types. You have these red tiles that allow you to buy in Queen Domino, which is different than King Domino. King Domino is actually a simpler version of this game, but in Queen Domino, you have these red tiles that you can purchase and then build on those spots, and that'll give you special in-game bonuses or end-game scoring as well. And basically, after all the tiles have been drafted through out of the box, the game is over, and whoever's built out their 5x5 territory the best, giving you the most points, wins the game. So, like I said, sounds more complex, me probably describing it or explaining it to you, but really a very, very simple game, and one that everybody can enjoy. That is Queen Domino.
Number 18.
All right, and my number 18 game was number 11 last year, so it has dropped down 7 places. I haven't been able to get this game to the table very much over the last year, maybe once or twice, so I am very disappointed in that because it being number 18, that's still very high on my list, and anytime somebody suggests to play this game, I am willing to play it. I'm willing to bring it out and teach it if they don't know it, or if everybody knows it around the table, even that much better. But either way, very simple game to teach again. It is a light worker placement game, and that game is Lords of Waterdeep. So Lords of Waterdeep, a very basic gateway level game that I don't know if it's just more nostalgic to me because I got it, actually bought this game earlier on in this hobby as I first got introduced to the hobby. So I don't know if the nostalgic factor, the fact that I've gotten this to the table so many times and have had this in my collection for so many years, that has a factor in how high it is, or if it's just that great of a game. But I know at the very least the expansion to this game, they only ever came out with one expansion, but the expansion to this game, the Scoundrels of Skullport, really adds a ton, and I think that that pretty much is the reason why it is so high on this list. Keeps it super fresh, but I'll get into what that adds a little bit later. But basically in Lords of Waterdeep, you can go to a spot to basically draft these different mission cards to place in front of you. there's these other locations that you're hiring either mercenaries or I don't know if they're monks or what the different, because they're all cubes in my version of the game. I don't know what they really stand for, but there's these different colored cubes that stand for these different hirees or different troops. And you're hiring them to your clan to then send them out on these missions. And if you fulfill the required colors of cubes that you need for the mission and send them out, you get to score that card for victory points. There's also these intrigue cards in the game that you can play to alter the gameplay, and some of them are take that to your opponent, like, oh, you have to give me some of your hirees so I get them, so you're kind of stealing from them. There's another spot on the board that you can actually build a building. That's you build it out to the common area on the board, so everybody can use that building during gameplay. But what's really neat is you put your own clan marker on that building, and if anybody else uses that building, you actually get the reward benefit on the bottom that's listed on the bottom of that building if anybody else uses it. So it's kind of neat because those buildings, as you build them out, are actually much more powerful than any other place on the regular game board. But there's also, not only do you want to use those, but it's also kind of fun seeing other players use those spots too, because they are so powerful that that you get a reward out of it if they use it. So that's really neat too. That's pretty much the gist of the game. I explained it all within a minute here. So very simple worker placement, gathering things to fulfill these missions, and you've got some other altering aspects to the game that can alter gameplay. That's what keeps it fresh and exciting too. So the Scoundrels of Skullport, the expansion that I was just talking about, really adds a ton too. It adds a corruption track to the board, so you can do these even more powerful actions by sending workers to these worker placement spots. But you can actually, by gathering that, you gain skulls. And depending on how many skulls you have at the end of the game, depending on how many skulls were taken, there's a threshold that you get more and more negative points per skull that you've gathered by the end of the game. So you really want to be careful that you're not taking too much corruption to get those extra schemy, very good actions. Otherwise you're left with a ton of negative victory points at the end of the game. There is definitely enough to this game that keeps it fresh each and every time, but super simple at its core, and one that's easy to teach, easy to play, easy to bring out. The board looks massive and big, but there's not a whole lot to it. So anyway, if that sounds fun to you, give it a try. Definitely super high up on my list here still, and that is Lords of Waterdeep.
Number 17.
Okay, and my number 17 favorite game of all time is actually brand new to the list. It is actually one that I played for the first time, and the second time, and the third, and the 100th time at PAX Unplugged this year, or this past year in 2019. So just played it for the first time, 4 or 5 months ago, and I just enjoyed the heck out of it, and that game is Crocanole. So yeah, a very high new addition to the list at number 17, but definitely a great game and a surprise hit to me. Basically, John from Talking Cardboard, him and I walked up to, we saw a table full of like 10 or 15 Crocanole boards laid out, and we're like, we have seen this game before. We've seen it played, but we don't know the rules of it, and we've never actually played it before, so we don't know if it's any fun. Let's give it a try. So him and I sat down to the table. We had a couple guys next to us that were nice enough to kind of teach us how to play and get us started, so that was a big help. But him and I just sat there for hours just playing this game, and then the next day we came back to it again, and the next day we came back to it again, and we didn't get a chance to play in any of the tournaments that were scheduled at PAX Unplugged, but we definitely want to this year. If we can get there this year, that would be a whole lot of fun. So basically in Crocanole, it's actually a game from that was invented in Canada in the 1800s, and you've got this big round board made out of wood, and you have these rubber pegs that are basically in a circle in the center of the board, and you've got these lines that almost look like a target, almost like in darts, but it's laying flat on the table, and you have these discs that you start on the edge of the table, and you actually flick them, and you're trying to get the discs to land in the center hole in the table because you get the most points that way. What's really fun about this game is not only are the discs, I mean, it's wooden discs on a waxed wooden board, but it doesn't feel like you're flicking a wooden disc on a wood board. It almost feels like you're flicking like a disc across a sheet of ice. It's so smooth, and it slides so nicely, and it's so rewarding when you can flick it at just the right speed to get it into the center of the board to get those points. If you don't land it in the hole in the center of the board, that's okay too. If you get it within the first ring of those rubber pegs I was talking about, if you can get it within there, the disc is still valid. But then what that does is that forces your opponent to then have to flick at your disc, because their disc is not valid unless it touches your disc first. So it would have to slide, hit your disc, and then wherever it bounces off from your opponent's disc and lands is where it stays. So that's really fun, because you can set up these crazy shots that are very difficult for your opponent to hit your disc, because if they flick and completely miss your disc, they have to take their disc off the board. So it adds a whole layer of strategy, and it's a ton of fun and has a whole lot of finesse to it. And one, just by looking at it, it looks easier than what it is. It is a very difficult game to play, but one that you could definitely get better at with practice. And that's what I'm looking forward to doing. I would really like to get my own Crocanole board one day and just sit around and practice it. And it would be a fun holiday game for holiday events with the family, and just get these big tournaments together. And that's honestly what I'm looking forward to, hopefully for this coming holiday season, about 9 months from now. So anyway, that is Crocanole, my number 17.
Number 16.
All right, and the last game on my list here today is number 16, and it was number 22 last year, so it's actually gone up 6 places. This game is actually a game that came out many years ago, I believe like 2010. So it's definitely going on about the 10-year mark now, and that game is Tois. So in Tois, it's a nice dice drafting game that has a ton of strategy and has some good variability gameplay to it each and every time. So you'll never play the same game twice. In Tois, each player rolls out a handful of dice at the beginning of their turn, and you've got white dice, red dice, and yellow dice. You've got those dice in front of you in your little town section, and what's really neat about Tois is that those dice, even though they were yours at the beginning of the round and that you rolled them and now those are your dice with those values, they're really not your dice. People can actually choose to buy those dice from you if they need a particular dice really bad. They can buy it from you, and you don't have the choice to decline it. You have to accept their offer. So, and depending on how many dice they buy from you to use during that turn, the value of those go up depending on the amount of dice. So if they want to buy 2 or 3 dice from you, it's a lot more expensive than if they're just buying 1 die from you. So there's a little bit of a balance to that in the game, but they can offer you the money, you have to accept, and they can take your dice from you and use it to their benefit. So you've got these different zones on the map with 3 cards on each zone. Like I said, you have like a white, more church zone. You have red, military, and you have yellow, which just has some basic like money generating buildings. And depending on what you do with those dice, those will trigger different buildings in different ways. And it is all about, it's almost like a victory point engine where you're just generating victory points the best you can with these dice. That is the entire part of the game. How to best use what dice you've rolled, and if you didn't roll exactly what you needed, hopefully you have enough money to buy the dice you need from your opponent to use them. And if you don't have enough money to buy from your opponent, then basically you didn't plan well enough for it in previous turns to gain that money to then be able to do that. So there is some dice mitigation in that way, some luck mitigation too. You're not just held strictly to what you rolled. You really need to plan for it. You need to plan for having enough money to get the dice that you need to use at these different locations to claim these different parts of the entire engine that this game creates with each different location. Like I said, different cards can combo with one another too, and the dice really make that happen. I mean, you have cards that have one color that actually might generate an engine for you that helps you with another color. card instead. So you're really trying to work out and combo the best you can with these buildings in front of you to win the game. And the game is really quick too. It's like something like 4 rounds, and each round doesn't last very long. You're basically just playing out the round until you can't use any more dice, or you choose not to use any more dice. If you pass early and your opponents keep playing, you actually get money from the bank, depending on how many turns they've used, how many turns more that they used that you didn't use. So that can kind of help you generate some money too. But just a really fun puzzle with dice. Really fun. I guess puzzle is not really the right word, but it's kind of sort of a puzzle because you're trying to combo the best you can with these. But it's just a very fun engine building game with dice. So if that sounds interesting to you, Tois is definitely one to check out. Don't let the age of it fool you, and don't let it dissuade you from how great of a game it is, because it is a highly regarded game in the industry, and a highly regarded game by me, obviously, as you can tell. So give it a shot. That is Tois. All right, everybody, and that does it for today's list. That is my games number 20 down to number 16. Like I have alluded to in previous videos, as we are getting into these awesome games higher up on the list, I'll actually be inviting more of the Talking Cardboard crew to join me in these videos. Probably not for video 15 to 11, the next one, but maybe when we hit the top 10 or the top 5, I'll invite some of the other guys to join me, and we'll have a big table discussion on what their top 10 or what their top 5 favorite games are of all time, so you'll get some bonus content. Anyway, I am looking forward to that. Like I said, next list is 15 down to 11, and then we're into the top 10 with some of the other guys. So that'll be a whole lot of fun. Like always, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you like what we're doing here on the channel, please consider subscribing. Please, we really do appreciate it, and really do appreciate your time sitting through these long videos as well. And that is it for now. Until next time, you all have a great day.